Three, two, one. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Get Stuff Done podcast. My name's Caden Cleveland. Of course, we have the director of OMES, Director Steve Harp. Steve, you doing okay?
Yeah, doing great.
Right on. Here we go. Our guest for this week is somebody who's been in the news quite often lately, maybe has one of the most difficult jobs, at least over the past 6 months, in the state of Oklahoma, the director of the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission, OESC, Shelley Zumwalt. Shelley, how you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Right
I'm super
on.
excited about this.
Let's go at it. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, you over the past 6 months, just diving right in, you've been the lead over at OESC, been one of the most highlighted agencies in the entire state of Oklahoma. What has this been like the last, I guess it's been about 5 months now, right, that you've been in the lead? So what is this whole, has it been a blur? Kind of give us a quick run through.
A little bit. Like I started at the end of May. It was actually May 27th to be exact. And there was a commission meeting and they voted and, it was a little dramatic. It was interesting. I'd never, gotten a job that way. And so it was right around 1 o'clock whenever they said, we'd like to offer you the position. When can you start? And I was like, I brought my lunch. Let's go. And right then, that's when I started. And it's been a roller coaster. That's awesome. I think that my takeaway, just, if we don't want to talk for 10 years about, the past 5 months, is that it's a huge problem. I'm a problem solver. That's what I like about things. And there's just a lot of complex moving parts with that agency. There's federal funding. There's, the state piece of it. Right. There's a lot of really aged technology there and in a workforce that's seen just the worst of the pandemic. So, you have culture issues too, because you're trying to change the way people do their jobs in a way that really hasn't happened at the agency in decades. So it's a lot of complex moving parts, but I really like it. No day is the same. And I get to come to my job every single day and know that it is just going to be like from 7:30 in the morning till, late at night, I am just going to be go and go and go.
So before we get into it, I want to talk about just some of those. You talked about being a problem solver. Talked about the process you went through and how you solved the problem of being able just even to interact with citizens in a greater way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know that, I'll probably have an answer to that like 2 hours after this when I'm like, oh, that's what I should have said. But I think that something I've always tried to do, well, let me take one step back. I was a single mom for 8 years, and I say that a lot because I think that kind of bridges that gap through people, because a lot of the people that are experiencing unemployment right now, they don't think of themselves as someone who needs unemployment, right? They've had circumstances because of the pandemic that have put them in this situation, and where I'm meeting them is not really, they would say, their best moment, right? So I try to put that out there and say, look, like I've made choices between like getting gas for my car and a prescription before. I've had some tough choices in my life, and not to say that other people haven't, but I feel like I try to bridge that gap with the claimant so that they know that if they're coming to me, I'm not going to be judgmental. Like, we just want to get you help. We want to get you to that next step and try to find you reemployment so that this, situation, you can look back on it and say, hey, I survived and now I'm thriving, and that's my goal.
Huge. That's got to be huge for these people, just knowing
it's massive because
the connection immediately with you.
I hope so.
Well, but you can echo this too. But the truth is the agency's business process was set up originally. Okay, these are my words. I'm not speaking for the agency or the people who set it up. Felt like, it's a feeling, that it was set up to treat people and put as many barriers in the way versus saying, hey, you need help and we're going to help you.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of different things with that agency that if you were to do it all over again, which we kind of are, right? You would do it differently. But the agency is built on like paper and phone calls. There is not a digital process. I think maybe about 2 months ago, I said, hey, if you're mailing someone a letter, you also need to be emailing them. And that, mind's blown, right? And I'm not saying that because people aren't, they're open to change. It's just that like, this is how the agency is run. I make a decision, I mail a letter, I do this over and over again, or I pick up the phone and I call someone. Well, you and I both know, when's the last time you answered your phone when you didn't know who it was? Like,
100%.
Yeah. Exactly. So like, this isn't an efficient way to, try to communicate with people. And I think it's twofold. It's trying to move into the digital age, but also having that personal experience. I do a lot of videos on social media
Right.
where I just talk to the claimants
Yep.
because I think that it's easy to be like, the government is out to get me and all of these problems are personal and they're trying to keep me from getting services. And that's absolutely not true. And so I think that if I can show me and personalize some of the challenges the agency has while also kind of innovating towards a digital piece of it. So it's not, it's being personal and being digital, forward facing at the same time. So people don't feel like they're getting moved towards somewhere where it's completely impersonal and they're just a number, right?
More of a cattle kind of just walk them through the process, and you're having a more personal approach to the whole situation. Is
I'm
that right?
trying. And that's where the
That's
claims
cool.
events kind of came in, right?
That's cool.
We
Yeah.
did those. We served 10,000
Where did
people.
that idea? That's amazing. Where did the idea come from? Because prior to that, they were lining up
Yeah.
outside the building.
That's interesting. I think you've had John Budd on here.
Yeah.
When I was doing communications for health and then kind of moonlighting at OESC because they didn't have a communications person, I came to him and I said, "Hey, what about this?" And that it was the claims events, but it was in April. And he was like, "Yeah, I like the idea." And I'm like, "It could be great for so many different reasons." And he was just like, "Yeah,
Pump the brakes, pump the brakes.
Exactly. Slow it down, Zumwalt. And so I just kind of tucked that back in my mind. And when we had people showing up at Will Rogers, I was like, this is it. We've got to figure out a way to scale up quickly, serve as many people as possible, but also train the workforce at OESC to be able to do that. Because when we put those claims agents in a big room where if they had a problem, they could ask the most knowledgeable person in the room, right? Then it was also a team training because there were so many points of obstruction for claimants. They would call the line or get a hold of someone. They're like, "Yeah, I can't do that," right? Because they hadn't been trained. So it was kind of multifaceted in that we met the claimant. And it's such a valuable experience. I think it's something that I'll keep learning lessons from for a long time.
Right.
But people just wanted to come to you and say, "Listen to what I went through." I mean, that happened so many times. And just have them being able to tell you their story and then to be able to say, "I'm so sorry that happened. We're going to help you today." That was, I think, the special sauce of that thing that really made it successful.
Do you find that there are still problems in the unemployment process or technology where a problem affects a large group of people? Or is it more the other opposite now where through all the work, or maybe it's all the above, but through all the work that you've done in the last 6 months, you've been able to streamline it down to where you're finding more unicorns and large-scale problems?
I think I would answer that both ways. I think that there are still large scale problems, but I will say, we talked a minute ago about payments processing and how we had to go turn on a server because a generator didn't kick on. I mean, that's just a lack of having anything in the cloud and anything that is automated, right? We did it. We saved it. Payments weren't, they still went out. All of that happened. So we still have large scale problems. I think we're able to react better. Maybe I'm more demanding. I think there's people that might agree with that. But the other piece of it is, yes, we are seeing the cases we're getting now are just these really complicated ones that you can't fix in 3 hours, right? Because another crazy thing about the system is if you change something, it has to process overnight, right? So if we go to backdate a claim, that has to process overnight. So the person, if I'm talking to you right now and I'll say, "Yes, I'm going to fix that for you." If you said, "Well, I don't see it being fixed," you're not going to.
So is that a legislative issue that you're required to wait 24 hours, or is that a process issue?
System issue. That's a batch. That's
Really?
an old mainframe system problem.
So, okay, a lot of things you both have mentioned here that I really want to dive into, but just to break off one topic right now, technology.
Yeah.
Okay. So technology over the past, really the entire pandemic has been at the forefront of the conversation with OESC.
Oh, for sure.
You heard story of people getting kicked off the website because there's too many people on the website, people getting kicked off, things like that. Really, this question is for both of you because I know, Steve, you've kind of helped out in this area also. But Shelley, can you talk about what problems you walked into technology-wise and then what solutions are in the works to seeing those improve?
Yeah. Again, we could talk for hours. And this is actually maybe my favorite subject because I get really excited about it. I've been in state government almost a decade. I've worked on a lot of technology projects. And usually what happens is funding, you have some sort of shortfall and you kind of have to do 3/4 of it, and then tie up the loose ends at the end, right? I mean, that happens over and over again. Or you don't really get to do exactly what you want because of, again, funding. And the interesting thing about right now with our technology technology project that we're working on. It's called BT40.
Okay.
Business transformation, 40 years of business transformation, right?
Ooh, I like that. That's
yeah,
good.
isn't that
that's
great?
good. Did you come up with that?
I did.
Aha.
Originally, it had like some words like very government words, like, connected citizen service, something like that. And I was like, oh, that sounds so
It's
government.
like, this is what we're trying to break away from.
No, it wasn't. It was so, I think enabling was in it. And I'm like, right? I mean, that's not a project I want to work on.
Right.
So we changed the name and we actually came up with a motto for it. And it's work fast and kick.
I like it.
Yep. And
I love it.
and that's what we've been.
Are you going to paint that on your walls?
I'm gonna repeat it as often as I can in the right
She'll have
environments.
to find a subword like you did for our GST.
I know. I'm
conference
working
room,
on it.
so-
Like we could say asp, like the tree. I don't know. We'll get there. I think there's some possibilities in there.
I love it.
But that's kind of the technology.
Right.
That's what I get so excited about. When I got to the agency, there was the 539 plan, which was a 5-year plan, had $39 million that was based on an employer fee that accrued in an account.
Okay.
And it was there. It was passed. The law for it was passed in 2017. And basically, the agency, pre-me, spent about a year and a half pulling this project together, and in 2019 kicked it off. Right. And by the time I got there in 2020, it was about a year in, about $4 million had been spent. And I don't have anything bad to say about the project, but it was pre-pandemic. The goals that they had were not the goals that the agency has now. There's just no way they could have anticipated the needs.
Sure.
So I knew going into it that I was going to completely pull it apart. Like it had to be, because if we're talking about a capacity of 200,000 claims, like we did that in 2 weeks in June. Like that's not going to work anymore.
How much progress had they made when you got there? I mean, did you find that they were far, in that first year and a half, they had completed a lot of either design or application work?
No, not really. I mean, there's a lot of discovery had been done. But what it was a consortium with other states. And I'm going to tell you exactly why I was against it. Because it was a consortium of 5 states. And basically what happened is the lead state kind of put forth whatever their requirements would be. And then the other states were supposed to add on to their specifications. And when I was looking at other projects like this, budgets were blown because the state UI's rules were so different that the modifications and the enhancements blew the budget. And I was like, nope, not going to work. And I think there was some people that probably disagreed with me that I've now gotten on board, because I think that with the CARES funding we had and the remainder of that fund that was accruing, that $39 million, we can actually do this in the right way and not have to do, a black box solution or anything like that. Like we can do exactly what we want to do, and we have the money to do it. But what that money is really going for is doing it in 18 months instead of 5 years. And that's what the agency needs. Like doing it in a fraction of the time. If I'm going to spend money, I'm going to do it so we can speed it up. It's aggressive. It's ambitious. It's a lot of things, but I can't tell you how excited I am for it.
I would say this, we're setting a track record right now on ambition, because when you look at the CARES projects, and the one specifically, one of the ones we're doing for OESC, that whole mainframe rewrite, that work has to be done by the end of this year.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can do that, I think we can do anything.
Yeah, I agree. We've got a good team. I mean, like I'm in meetings every day on it, and it's super exciting to see. But I think the most exciting piece of it for me is the communication piece, right? Because I think from a claimant point of view, their biggest complaint is, I don't know what's going on. I have like an error code that comes up whenever and it's like non-mon or pending, or there's all these different cryptic things that they get, but like there's actually no communication that gives them any status other than maybe denied. And then that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
So being able to enhance the technology at the agency, but also being able to give them that communication that says, here's exactly what's happening with your claim at this point, in a way that doesn't require a phone call or a letter. Like we're really going to be enhancing the communication to the claimant so that they're not just sitting out in another world saying, I don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to kind of touch on, you mentioned it, and it has to do with the motto around this new technology deal. And I think it leads into a broader conversation of what you've been attempting to lead at OESC, which is a little bit of a culture change with the mindset, a culture change within OESC. So talk through like that motto is a kind of a reflection of what you're trying to do as an OESC as a whole. Is that not the case?
I mean, I want to start off by saying, because I think anytime you have a leader that talks about culture change, sometimes there's this idea that the culture was bad before. And I don't think it was bad, but I do think that they were able to silo themselves on an island where they didn't really integrate themselves with the rest of state government. And me being from OMES, I was like, whoa. We're in the middle of it. We're the Central Services Agency and right? And so I think that was kind of one of those perspectives I brought. Like, just as, when we had the outages and agencies were closed, the agency hadn't gone by DPS. They had just done their own thing. Right. And I was like, whoa.
Really?
No. We do not do that.
So did you find that the agency itself was siloed, and then also within it there were individual silos?
For sure. Because we have 28 locations all over the state. And so I think it goes without saying, what happens in Lawton is not the same thing that happens in Guyman, right? Sure. And so trying to standardize that has been a huge undertaking, and saying, so I want every claimant, whether they go to our office in Podo or our office in Tulsa, to have the same experience. And that is not what's happening. And when I got there, we're starting to get there, but that's like turning a huge tanker, is saying, hey, here's the standard. And I also want you to, jump into 2020 at the same time.
Right.
And because I got a lot of, the solution is going back to how we did stuff. Right? I hear that all the time. And it started to
that makes me cringe a little bit.
I know. But when we're talking about fraud, the solution that I got my first week there, we should just make everybody show their IDs when they go to the regional offices. That stopped fraud. And I'm like, we have 100 people in line there every day. I don't know that's the most efficient way, nor does that if it was me, if I had an agency do that, I'd be like, oh my gosh, are they protecting my information? If that is the standard, right? So kind of shifting their thinking towards, hey, the way we did it in 1980, even if we did that in 2019, 2020 is a little different.
So for the people out there, remind them the size and scope of the agency. So talk, high level metrics, and I've seen you recently talk about some of this, like how much we paid out since the pandemic, how many people are there, and then maybe how many claims you guys have seen.
Oh yeah, I know those. I know those. Actually, as of yesterday, we've paid out $3.5 billion since March 1st.
So give some context around, like in previous years, what are our comparisons here?
Yeah, I mean the year before it was 214,000, or excuse me, million. Sorry, 214 million.
But
so
not even close.
Yeah. So I want to give you something to hold on to with that. So we have paid out more since March than we did the entire decade preceding, from 2009 to 2010 to 2019, we paid out less than $3.5 billion in total. So we have, when you see the chart, it's like, and then it just goes, oh, sorry, Mike. It's unreal. And then we've processed over 800,000 claims.
Since March 1st.
Yeah.
God.
I know. It's unreal. So we have about 500 people at the agency, which if you look at other $3.5 billion they're in the $50,000, $60,000, people range.
Right.
So we're doing less than 1% and throwing money out the door, so to speak, at a rate that's pretty unparalleled.
So what's the future look like then? So we've got, the good news is we're top 10 now in unemployment, meaning in the right way, right? Lower unemployment. Are you and the team able to start strategizing now and just kind of walk us through what that looks like these days at OESC?
Yeah, I think the next step for the agency is ReEmployment Services. Obviously, we're still, higher than normal claims volumes. That's going to happen. But how do we get people exposed to the workforce in a way that is responsible during a pandemic?
Right.
And I think, the next step is doing virtual job fairs, right? Figuring out how do we get a large group of people in digital space, right, as opposed to physical space, and showing them what opportunities are out there. And we've really actually been working this exercise as far as, do we do it regionally so that we can have different employers, and is it an app that we do so that they enter into their region and see what employers are available.
Right.
And so I think that's the next step right now, is how do we continue this digital revolution as part of the ReEmployment reemployment piece. And that's super exciting to me because I think that it is
cool.
the responsible pandemic way to do this, right?
Yeah.
But it also says we're not just telling you to do this and then saying good luck with it. We're gonna find avenues for you so that you can be successful and find a position.
So I think that's big right there, is the mindset and what you're bringing to OESC is the fact that you are serving them, but also opening up the other side of it of helping them get off unemployment, and you're opening up those opportunities. That's a big thing to me. Is that something that OESC did, I guess, a lot before the pandemic?
They do have a ReEmployment Services piece. And so, they did have job fairs before. I think this is a completely different way of thinking about it. It as was a lot of the agency, it was kind of segregated to different areas. Like the regional offices very much operated in their own,
Right,
and
okay.
so they would
the
have
virtual side of it is brand new, though, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
That's cool. I really like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's neat.
The minds are being blown on that one for sure because it was like, but what about if we have? I'm like, they're not going anywhere. They just, and so it's overcoming the idea of how we used to do it.
That's
because
cool.
I think that, we can't divorce the emotion from it,
No,
right?
right,
Because there's a lot of people, gosh, they are the best people, the best hearts. Like
absolutely.
they really
That's right.
do this because they believe in the people that they serve. And that is the core of why, people stay employed in a place where a lot of times they're getting angry people every single day that they talk to, but they can help them. They can change their day, right?
But that's interesting. So talk to us about the mental health of your employees, because literally, I know early on occasionally there were death threats. There were all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Suicide. Literally, I didn't think about that till you just mentioned it. But talk to us about the mental health of your employees and what you guys have done or how you guys have bonded around this stuff. No, people forget about that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just the impacted citizen. It's when they're calling out and reaching out for help. When these people are desperate, the people taking those phone calls or seeing these people face to face aren't always
that's taxing
ready
them.
for that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, the first thing is we hired more people, for the call centers and for adjudication and some of these positions so that, early on when I said people need to be taking off time. Like you cannot just work 7 days a week on end and I say that having done it. You and I both did it. You did it. I think I was at just under 100 days straight. That's fine. But I don't want that to be the standard that other people feel like they have to emulate.
Sure.
So we had to hire more people so they felt like they could do that, right? Because I can say take a day off, but if your emails are piling up, they're not going to. So we had to do that and make sure we enabled them to be able to do that.
That's good.
The other piece of it is to make sure that we were responding when there were mental health, crisis type situations. I had the OHP on speed dial for a couple of different things. I got threats too. And it was, it's a tense situation, but at the end of the day, they're just desperate people, and you try to help them so that they're not feeling that desperation where they feel like they have to act out. And I think the other piece of it that is really important is I had a talk with my senior staff the other day because I noticed that we were prizing working 100 hours a week or working a ton of hours. And I was like, that is not our value. Our value is not in working 100 hours a week. Our value is working 50 hours a week and getting it done right the first time. Because a lot of times the reason why they're having to work 100 hours is because we messed it up and we're fixing it.
Oh, man.
And so I had to really change that mindset. And I was like, I no longer want to hear so-and-so did a great job because they fixed this and I think they worked 100 hours. No. We will praise that they did it right the first time because that, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You have to put your values in the place where you want them. And if we're always praising making a mistake and then working a ton of hours to fix it, then we're never going to get ahead, right? And so that was a mind shift that we had to do.
So talk about, excuse me, my throat's going dry. Talk about some of the partnerships, help, people you've worked with in the legislature, or whoever those people are.
You mentioned the interim study a little bit ago that you guys did just last week. Is there specific legislators that either you want to give a shout out to or you worked with closely? What did that whole thing look like? Because I know I heard even a lot at OMES from like assistants and things like that who are hearing from constituents in areas, and then you're hearing from senators and representatives like, hey, need some help.
Yeah.
So like, what did that whole thing look like?
Yeah, that was a great experience. And I know that sounds weird because
interesting.
usually
Okay.
people don't come out of interim studies and say, man, I'd do that again in a heartbeat. There was a lot of prep. The one that I had in the afternoon was solely on OESC.
Right.
And we did a timeline that, no kidding, spanned almost 50 years.
Wow.
And the prep for that was intense. And my talking points were over 50 pages. But to be honest with you, it was really helpful for me too. Like, I know that stuff cold now, and I knew it before, but now it's like after speaking for 3 hours straight, you're like, ask me anything.
Yeah,
I got
right.
this. But the one in the morning was on conduit, and I actually have something exciting to tell you guys hot off the presses. So one of the
go.
points of contention that we had with conduit, and I do have to give a shout out to Senator Lee Wright, Senator Hall, and Senator Boren. They were the 3 senators that were in this specific study, and I know without this interim study, I don't think the change that was made would have happened. It was because
great.
we shined a light on it, and we demanded change, basically. Conduit had a 25-cent fee that was applied to phone calls. After 5 phone calls, then the claimant, the unemployment claimant, was charged 25 cents for every call after that 5th call.
Wow.
Yeah, and so when we had...
Seems a little backwards.
I know. And so, I mean... First of all, we're talking about people that are on unemployment,
Right.
and then we're charging them money
Exactly.
to like call.
Exactly. Right.
On the surface, that's just deplorable. I feel
amazing.
like, yeah. And so we brought it up in the interim study, and Senator Lee Wright said, "Well, what's your revenue off of that call?" And to be fair, I'm sure they'll give us that answer. We haven't gotten it yet, but I'm sure they'll give it to us. And we really shined a light on, like, what is the value of that? Why are we charging people that are on assistance to interact with the vendor that the state is paying, right?
That's the thing. And it doesn't cost them any more money. They're penalizing you for it is what they're doing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and also, I mean, I'm sure it artificially depresses their call volume, right? I mean,
yeah.
because if I'm only getting X amount of dollars and it's October 2nd and I'm already on my 5th call, like, I may not actually call to get
Right.
information, because I'm like, well, if I call every single day, that's going to be $10,
Right.
and $10. And the thing is, like, putting that in perspective to someone that a $10 decision is the difference maybe between their kids eating or not, right?
But the call's not the issue of the payment of the call is not between the claimant and conduit. It's between conduit and the state of Oklahoma.
Absolutely. And the state of Oklahoma is the customer in that situation. And just long story short, I had a phone call yesterday with our representative from Conduit, and they, starting today, have eliminated that 25-cent fee. And that to
is
me
huge.
is just that is the victory that I want to have, is that we said, hey, we don't think this is fair. We're demanding you to reevaluate what you're doing, and the benefit is to the claimant. And I think that's how, when state government does what it does well.
That's awesome. On to this. We got this new segment. We've only done it one other time. We've received some questions from our audience. We picked out of a handful of questions some we thought some were some really cool ones to get some more insight from you, but also towards the agency. So, Steve, why don't you take that first one?
All right, first one. What advice would you give others who are leading organizations for the first time?
Wow. Whenever you're a kid and you think, like, when I'm an adult, or when I can drive, I'm going to do, you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
I mean, everybody has
absolutely.
it. And I think that I've been asked that question before, and I kind of think, well, am I qualified to answer that? Or like leading in a crisis. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm still doing it. I don't think I can talk about it.
You're still learning about it,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
in the past tense at this point. But it's been an interesting ride. And I think the one thing that for me has been super helpful was just kind of reframing what success is for me. Before I became director of OESC, I zeroed out my email every single day. And I had, everything. I can be a little bit controlling, shocker, I know. But I had these things that I felt like kept me on track that I couldn't do because of what was going on in the crisis. I had to pick what I valued, right? And if I valued answering every single email, then I wasn't going to be able to lead the team effectively. Right. And I had to really pick and choose where I put my value. And it wasn't in answering emails every single day.
Right.
There's probably, I'm sorry to people, I try to, I answer your emails. Senators, I answer your emails. Every legislator gets governor, cabinet secretaries, but I wasn't going to be successful at claims events or at, leading a digital technology transformation. if I really put my value in, every single email gets read and I've zeroed out my email box and I can go on down the way. I kind of had to define success in a different way. And I would say that for leaders, there's a formula that's made you successful, right? There's a formula that's gotten you to where you're at. And I think that formula got me to a point, but I had never had to lead 500 people in a crisis. And so being able to be a little bit flexible in that moment, I think is what enabled me to be able to be successful in this situation, was knowing that, my level of success and the hallmarks of what I thought was being a good leader were different than what I had in the past. And that's what I would say, is that be a little bit more aware of where you put success. Success for me was being accessible to the press.
Right.
Every single interview I did, they weren't all things that I'm going to be like, hey, Mom, watch this, right? Because we had to talk about tough things and we weren't always successful. But I wanted to make sure that the claimants knew that I was going to answer those questions. I wasn't hiding behind, in an office saying,
right.
I don't want to talk about it. I was going to be accessible. And so those were the things that I really had to keep in mind. What does success look like in this situation? And if it changes, what are my new hallmarks for success? And I think after we got out of the claims events, trying to run a 500-person organization and serve 10,000 people at the same time, working remotely in Tulsa and Ardmore and all.
Right.
And then when we finished the month of those, I was like, what am I going to do with all this time? I'm not, So it was almost like I ramped up to a point where I was like almost out of energy. And then we finished, and then I had time to kind of evaluate, okay, now that we've done that, what does success look like in this new, this new version of, and I think that's been really helpful to me.
That's cool.
Is that what I did as Shelley Zumwalt, Chief of Innovation, is not really what's going to make me successful. Some of it is, but really finding what success looks like in this new role, and also knowing that it'll change. As we go to different versions of the pandemic, it's going to change.
I love that answer.
That's a really good answer. I love that. Next question's from Brian in Oklahoma City. He says, if you could pick out one thing, what is the top thing that has changed at OESC in the past 6 months to improve customer service?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think that my answer is twofold on that, right? I think that transparency has helped. I would say that that's not necessarily your first thing you think of in customer service, but I think it's the one thing that people can put a pinpoint on that makes them feel a certain way. Because at the end of the day, they want service, right? They want results, but they also want to feel like that the person that helped them, that they made them feel like they matter. Mm-hmm. And I realized that because at one of the claims events, this is an interesting story. I sat down next to a lady and I said, how are you? What are you here for? I tried to do that, multiple times a day at those claims events because I wanted to be accessible to people. Right. I didn't want to be that ivory tower, person that people say I'm sure they exist, but I don't know them. Right. And I asked her about it, and she told me the story about her claim getting stopped, and she's going to lose her house and she can't feed her kids. And I was like, okay, I think I can help you. And so I took her into another room and I called one of my claims agents, and we worked through it. We got her claim fixed, and her name's Fran. And I gave her my phone number in case she had more problems. And then she during a pandemic, she's like, I'm sorry, I just have to hug you. And so she gives me, and I just went with it, No, I'm negative, by the way, but
I'm too.
I just went with it. And then afterwards she was crying and she said, I have to tell you something. And I was like, what is it, Fran? And she said, I started a hashtag Fire Zumwalt, and
no way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And she said, I feel really bad about it because and
why would she even say it?
I think it's because it's that idea of I want someone to blame because things are going wrong, And I was
and you were just put in the job, and
exactly.
Now it's all your fault.
It is all my fault. And so I said, well, that's okay. I mean, I get it. You're mad, And she goes, well, now I feel really bad because I don't want you to be fired. and so she posted on Facebook. She's like, I'm gonna eat crow. She helped me, and we've actually stayed friends. She texted me. She just got a new job and she's reemployed now. She's doing well.
Right.
But I think that back to your question of what are the customer service pieces, that piece of being transparent and being relatable and being accessible for people,
right,
is really, I think, the secret sauce in a situation like this, because people know, like, I'll show up every single day and you can see me. I would put a cam in my office of them watching me work if I could, but those are the videos, of saying, hey, I know I've seen your comments on social media. Let me tell you what's going on here straight from me.
Right.
I think that is that customer service piece that, like, you're doing a digital transformation, but they also have to know that you're personally invested.
Absolutely.
And I think that's bridging that gap is really important on customer service. The other piece of it would be the claims events. I mean, that was really serving that many people. I mean, for a month.
Did you feel like that was a turning point?
I did.
Once you got through those?
I did.
I felt like it was brilliant.
I thought, honestly,
I mean,
just
you started by doing that in the Concourse Theater originally, and then you moved to Midwest City and Tulsa,
almost like
right?
scaled it up.
Yeah.
It was like,
Oh,
hey,
it was
this is
amazing.
successful. Let's do this on a larger scale.
Yeah.
Awesome. I felt like, at least just from an outsider's perspective, that was kind of the point where it started looking like, oh, okay, yeah. Like it's looking up. Like, let's go.
By the time we went to Ardmore, we actually we weren't at capacity anymore because we'd helped so many people. Like, that was the day that I was like, yes.
That is cool.
Yeah, it was great. And I think that was the one that was, I mean, it also for staff, we talk about culture and everything. I think staff needed to see me there at 5:30 in the morning and there at 8 o'clock at night when we finished, right? And, like, being in the mix and calling out numbers and, like, helping people so that they knew that I had skin in the game. I am there. I'm helping.
Yeah.
And
You're
I
not
think
just
that
in your
was,
office giving orders.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, like, I'm showing up every single day. And it's not because I thought beforehand I need to do this. I think that I really believe that that's what a leader should do.
That's
You should
exactly
be in the
right.
mix and really helping
exactly
and
right.
showing people that you're invested in their success. And I think that was the piece of it that was really important too, for not only staff, but for claimants,
Right.
because they needed us to do something. They needed us to meet them halfway. The phone lines were jammed. For whatever reason, they weren't having success on the internet. They needed a different solution. So that's why that was the customer service piece that said, hey, we're going to do this differently, and we're going to do it in a safe way, and we're going to make sure that every single person that that is in this place is going to see someone.
Well, Shelley, the whole purpose of this show, and you know it, is really just to give an opportunity for us to highlight the significant leaders in our state, and really just anybody who's making an impact in our state. And you definitely qualify as somebody who's made an unbelievable impact just in the past 5 months. So seriously, thank you so much for coming on the show. But more importantly, thank you for the service that you are providing for our state and for all those people in need in our state. Seriously.
Well, it's the best job in Oklahoma, I got to tell you. Thank you guys for having me.
You bet.
Well, guys, thank you so much for listening in. Again, appreciate Shelley coming on the show. Appreciate you guys listening. We're going to have another episode coming up next on the Get Stuff Done podcast. So stay tuned for that here in the next few weeks. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks,
See you guys. Be
Thanks.
good.
Bye.
Thanks, Shelley.
Yeah.
Was that good?
It was super fun. I do this all day.